How you doing, Bruce and Abdul? Ah, boy, I tell you, we've had the day turned out to be one of those perfect fall days. I hope it's great where you guys are. Oops, there, got that turned off. Indrajit, how are you? Gee, I wonder. I should turn my phone back on. I usually like to turn it off when we're talking. Hi, Hater, how you doing? Oh boy, I've been looking at economic theories. Hi, Donald. On looking at economic theories that they have on bubbles, and hey, David, the law of supply and demand. Yeah, buy low and sell high. Uh, there's always that. Hey, Steve. Um, so anyway, they some of them are a little more complex than that. Some years ago, there was a woman in the business school uh, at the University of Hartford where I was teaching, and she and I got together on a book. This was gee whiz, right around 2001, right in that area, and she was writing on sort of the marketing aspect of it, and I was writing on the more the technological side of it and how they would work together and so forth. And I don't know. I tell you, um, to do well in business, I think, but you need some good planning. But man, I tell you, you need some good luck. I don't want to get into my good and bad stories on luck, but there are a lot of them. Hey, Watch Monkey, how you doing, John? Thomas, how are you? Jonathan, good to see you. Hey, Clyde, glad you could make it. Hey, Patrick. Um, So anyway, what I wanted to do is to start off today, and I when I was going through these different economic theories. Hi, Mark. Hi, old bud. I was looking at these different what these different economists were saying, and I think at one time somebody referred to economics as the dismal science. I, I think I know what they mean. Um, there. There are a lot of things in looking at bubbles, how they come about and and what happens to them. Hey, Thomas. Um, so I thought, okay, well, where are we in the watch world as far as bubbles are concerned? Some watches I know are in such a huge bubble right now that it's really, I mean, mind-boggling. My FP Journe was one, so I thought, well, I was wearing it anyway today, but it's a perfect one. So let me talk about first of all, sort of a overview of what they refer to as steps in a bubble, and they start off with a state called displacement. I don't know why it's displacement, but it's essentially where something happens that people get excited about and they want to this usually refers to buying stocks and bonds and things like that, or any kind of product really. Hey, get this thing down. We've had, like I said, today's one of those really beautiful fall weathers, and it's not sure whether it's cold or warm. Anyway, so the first step was that, so people say, hey, I want one of those. Then it becomes a boom when the the people really get excited about it and they start buying it. And then there's euphoria, what they call euphoria. People just sort of start looking at it like, man, this is like, having a machine that just cranks out money for you. And then the next step, and I realize I've been involved in this step, but is profit taking. And that's when somebody says, "Hey, this isn't gonna last forever," so they're getting rid of it. Usually the product is some kind of stock. And then finally is a panic, and they describe that as when people say, "Oh man, I tell you, if I don't get out now, I gotta get rid of this stuff or I'm doomed." Well, that's may work pretty well, or even describe something in the stock market. And a lot of these guys are stockbrokers, and they're making up stuff left and right. So I think the bubble that we're in now has this sequence to it. We started off minding our own business back in 2019. Okay, there was a pretty steady demand for watches of a certain kind, and just sort of went along, and that was that. Uh, and what happened was the pandemic essentially. So suddenly the availability of watches, watch parts, and everything else about them fell dramatically. And so this what happened, and prices started going up because people started realizing, people selling watches saying, "Hey, there aren't any more around. I can get a little more money than I could otherwise." Um, and then the prices slowly rise. There's a panic. And by that I mean this thing went up from 20 to $70,000, which is just madness in my opinion. Uh, Half the watches I couldn't afford that I couldn't afford today. Uh, and then what would happen is that when the supply increases, in other words, the pandemic is damped down, then we should see I don't know if there's going to be like a bursting bubble. I don't know what's going to happen next. I I have a feeling that if somebody paid like I don't know what these things cost brand new. Not a lot of my watches are brand new, or they're on some kind of deal. They're I don't know what the state is gonna be. Now, if somebody went out and they got their mitts on a bunch of, Chronomet Blues, which are now going for 100,000, uh, and up, and all of a sudden they figure, "Hey, man, I'm gonna get stuck with these things if I don't sell them." And at some point, there's going to be there'll be a little more supply, and so they may tumble back, but I don't know how far. I don't think it has the effect of a bursting bubble or a popping balloon. I think more it's going to be sort of a decline in terms of uh, the demand because people will have enough of what they want. Also, too, people like me, the the vultures. I see this. I see it as a great opportunity for selling watches, and I have been doing that with, but I don't have that many I want to sell. But the ones I have, I've been doing quite well with. And but if enough people are doing the same thing, pretty soon the supply increases in pre-owned watches. And the so I think I don't think we're going to see a bubble burst so much as sort of a deflation of prices, more of a sort of an intake. See, the thing of it is that most watch collection is not rational. It's just not. We have certain things we like, or this and that, and the people selling watches are doing all kinds of things to make their products attractive in ways that really may not have a whole lot to do with excellent horology, but rather some other kinds of things that people like to buy watches on. I don't know. That's sort of my take on it. What do you guys think? Oh, let's see who we got here. The watch bubble is like a tulip mania. Is that the yeah, I know the tulip thing, that was a great one. Let's see. Hey, obese tuna, how you doing? Uh, Flippin' Zippo, great, you did make it. balloon deflating. Yeah, and they make that funny sound of when they go out. Um, I think that a lot of people are using some watches as a store of value as hedge against inflation. Maybe a deflationary shock is what can burst the watch bubble while inflation will keep it going. Yeah, that's sort of an interesting thing. I don't know what's going to happen with inflation and this. So many they have these guys who are supposed to juggle things so that we don't go into another worldwide depression like in the 1930s. Um, in the early 2000s, I think it was around 2007, when they had what they called the Great Recession, and there was that had to do with totally unregulated, crazy stuff they were doing in the stock market, and what do they call them? Some kind of insurance. Nah, some kind of insurance deal they had going at I forgot what it's called, something something, and then they said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore, but then it snuck back into the market and then blow up again someday. um, Nobody expected the stagflation in the 70s. Correct predictions are often correct by chance. Yeah, I know the stagflation. I think a lot of the stagflation that occurred in the 70s had to do, and again, you can say I'm nuts, was the Arab-Israeli War in 1973, because during that period, a lot of here was another war that was very costly to everybody. And so what they wanted to do, uh, certain oil producing states said, hey, let's get together and we can get what we want diplomatically rather than going to war if we control the oil prices and make them go up and down. And what happened was that whoop, up they went up, the prices, the oil price went up. But that's this is something like I have a feeling that a lot of this stuff is totally unpredictable. One of the interesting things, I forgot when it was, sometime in I think it's the early 2000s, the very worst investment that could have been made if you made the investment in the 80s was gold. Gold just didn't go anywhere. Whereas the computer thing, the first boom on that, and then they had the internet boom, and they had all of these different booms that came across that had to do with new technologies. So now there are things that are going on that we're sort of like observers to, I think, and we can take advantage of them for our, for in a little way, as long as we recognize what they are. But boy, I tell you, whether we can really control them very much or not is, I don't know. Hey, Miami James, how you doing? Hey, Robert, no pop because the types of people who pay over a few grand for a watch are getting wealthier. Not me. I, I'm not one of them. I remember seeing Chronomet Blue in the 20s when I saw a particular well-known watch company listed them for 40K, then 60K. Now it's over 100K. Yeah, yeah. This is crazy. What happened? When I got this watch, I could have got this one, or I could have got the blue. I like this one better. Uh, I just liked it better. But it's essentially the same watch. The difference between a Chronomet Blue and a Chronomet Cervane is that the Cervanes have the power reserve indicator, and I like that. Uh, the the color on the Chronomet Blue is gorgeous. It changes. It does a lot of interesting things. But I had that on my Beauvais. So we don't know. That's the truth of the matter. Um, Credit. That's it. Ramsey. That's what I was thinking of. Credit default swaps. That was another word for cheating in some way. This was developed by this gal, this economist from Cambridge, And what she did was, I think, after she realized some of the consequences of it, yeah, credit default swaps. It's a certain type of insurance is illegal, and credit default swaps was to replace that. Hey, Velvia, man, not rational. That is why my watchmaker says about my vintage Zenith collection. Yeah, I tell you, Velvia, man, a vintage Zenith or any kind of collection with watches that you like because of whatever reason. I mentioned this one guy that I said they had a video about this guy who was nuts about Omegas. It's not. I have my stupid collection. These are my outlaw watches because they have a shape movement by a guy who had to go to prison for robbery. So I've been collecting all of the watches with that kind of movement. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think any of the stuff we do makes any sense or a whole lot of sense. But one thing that the old somebody mentioned the law of supply and demand. Uh, there can also be an illusion of supply and demand. Sometimes you think, oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff, and you're not interested in paying a lot for it. Other times it's the opposite. Um, the bubble is fairly confined to a few manufactured Rolex, AP, and FP Journe. Prices are generally going up, but then interest is taken off in the Instagram generation. I don't know. The Instagram generation, I've had an Instagram account, I think, ever since they started, but I put some pictures up and stuff, but there doesn't seem to be very good for the kind of communication that I like. Not that, not my generation. Hey, traveling nomad, how you doing? Zenith Pilot, Chronometro T, oh boy, and Black Bay Chrono Panda. Well, I like Zenith pilots a lot, and oh boy, uh, I see a couple chronographs. I'm not a chronograph guy. Nothing against them. I just not into chronographs. And so, ask some of these guys here are really smart chronograph people. They can give you a better thing. Um, Tantalum casing also. Yeah. Yeah, tantalum is not that rare, but it's extremely hard to work with. And so if you have and it's very hard. Oh God, there was a scandal on tantalum. Is someplace in the Congo where they were doing some tantalum mining. What they were doing also is that the company was killing these gorillas and feeding it to the workers. I thought, holy smoke, you kill a gorilla? I mean, endangered species. Please don't pretend you are not rich. It's not working. I wish I listen. Um, those guys who live on tents and Skid Row. Yeah, I'm richer than them, but I'm not rich. By the way, Mark. By the way, too, that reminds me. I've used you as an example. This is Mark J. Mark ordered, and I hope I'm not telling any tales out of school, but I won't say the brand. Okay, Mark ordered a watch, and he's been waiting and waiting to get it, and I am hoping that they come through with a deal that Mark made because I think he made a very good deal, and if the watch comes through, he might be able to have a really good one. Lang seems to be higher on the used market right now. All Longa Mark, yeah, I mean, they all are. This is one of the things that some of us have been buying some watches that are sort of off the beaten path, so to speak, but really good watches, excellent watchmakers. And we found that others have discovered our little niche as well. We didn't get them because as investments, we got them because one, they were excellent watches, and two, we could afford them. But they're starting to creep up. There are two things creeping up and disappearing. This one right here, this is a Jacquet Droz with a Jacquet 736 movement. This was really hard to find You found two of them, and we bought them, and we haven't seen them since. Now, I don't know if people are out running around trying to find watches like this, but one of the things that's interesting about it is that, if you look at the sort of these mainstream watches, the Holy Trinity and Rolex and those guys, uh, I to me, though, they have a little more predictable, I think. But some of the ones that are, sort of off the beaten path are not as predictable, much more interesting, and I don't know whether they're more dangerous or more fun. But a lot of stuff like that is just going on. That's almost cannibalism. I know, Flip and Zippo. That's why it was such a scandal. This is yeah. Look at my tantium case. It costs 3 gorillas. Oh no. Hey, rich people have so much extra money. They are buying NTFs. Yep. What's an NTF? Something I'm not sure what they are. This is one of the things a brand that I don't understand the attraction to, but they're able to do quite well financially, or at least in terms of what people pay for them, are the Richard Milles. I don't. The movements are not sort of manufactured by them. I don't know. I have 2 piggy banks. That how did that get out, John? My 2 piggy banks, and both of them are broken. Um, Chopard LUC watches are not moving still. Maybe they'll be the next to get discovered. Abdul, that's a good point. Not too long ago, I did a video on LUCs, and that was the same thing that I found then, was that their things. One of the things I think that lost the luster, at least for me, and I think it was Chopard, they're sticking in silicon balances or balance springs, doing stuff like that. And now Patek Philippe can do it and get away with it, and then come up with a bunch of reasons why it's okay. I suppose they could come up with the same reason why it's okay to have, plastic or nylon bridges and plates too. I mean, they're not, they're just as strong and this and all of these other things. I don't know. That I think is, one of those things. Seems like you could almost trip over P.F. Jacques Droz, Roger Dubuis, or Daniel Roth, and they've all gone. Yeah, boom, all of those. This was something I bought. One I got on eBay, and this is some couple Daniel Roth, and the other one I got on auction. And they're if they are around, the zip, 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 the price is going up. This is why it's I when you're dealing with a the watches that were made by Daniel Roth and Roger Dubuis, and some of I mean, they're branded watches that started at least while they were still alive. Um, you know that they're not going to be around. They're not going to make any more of them. If I take a look right now, if somebody gave me a choice between a brand new Roger Dubuis and one that was made in early 2000s, I'd go with the one that was made in the early 2000s. I like the styles better. Better. I mean, I think they were making more movements because this guy has so much talent. And what I think the new company has done is to say, look, this is getting real expensive having all these different movements. Why don't we sort of try to move things along just a handful of movements? And if you look carefully, most watch companies do that. I don't, some of them have one movement, and they put different lipstick on it pretty much, run it around. Yeah, Parmigiani. Mark Parmigiani doing some Richard Milles. Parmigiani, actually, it's I think you may mean Vasseur, Mark. May be wrong, but they're part of this big vertical organization that you have Parmigiani, um, Vasseur, Atacapo, and then all of these other ones that make up sort of this Sandoz family owned. God, I hate to call it a conglomerate, but basically it's a vertically organized watchmaking organization. So you have that. And one of the interesting things about it, I was reading somewhere about the number of hairsprings that Atocalpa make. And it's something like they're selling 230,000 of those. Well, nowhere near that many are going into Parmigianis. They're just not. They're going outside of that. In fact, they're not even even if you take all of the Vaucheurs that they're slipping into as many different watches considered higher quality watches, same thing. You have all of these other ones. When I interviewed, Edouard Milan of the CEO of H. Moser, he was telling me is that their profits from the what's the name of their hairsprings, Strassmann hairsprings, those are the they're I asked him, I said, I hear you have selling about 20,000 of those and 2,000 watches. He said, no, it's more like 50, 60,000. So there are other kinds of things that are going on. And so, when we talk about a bubble, it's it's more like a bubble bath or full of all of these bubbles. Some of them are going to get bigger and pop. Others are just going to stay bubble size, and others will shrink going out there. Parmigiani needs to take its entire marketing department out the back door and line them up against the wall. Yeah, one of the things Parmigiani got a new CEO, and what he did was to come out with sort of a new line. And I like the looks of their new line, by the way, but I also like a lot of their older ones. And with what the rancher just said, maybe they ought to reconsider the marketing. Where you have somebody who is essentially an artist, okay, like Michel Parmigiani. He was hired. They wanted to name a company after him. He was working in the Sandoz family had a restoration. They were doing a lot of restorations of watch restoration. Of course, that's where we get all of our best ultimate watchmakers who restores. That's what F.P. Journe did at his uncle's place for years. And so, but this guy, that doesn't mean a good businessman. One of the few good businessmen, I think, in watchmaking, two. One is F.P. Journe, the other one's Kari Voutilanen. And other than those two, I'm not sure too many are. Some of the very best, Marco Lang. Marco Lang is a great watchmaker. I mean, one of the best, in my opinion. But he sort of ended up getting pushed out of his own company because I guess he had to something was done in certain ways, and they said, "Well, we can maybe do this to cut down on costs." And that may have been why he's saying, "Look, if you do that, that's going to cut into the quality." And I don't know what happened, to be honest, but say I know that in these high tech companies, very few of the principals end up running them after a few years once they get started. Bill Gates, of course, is an exception. Stephen Jobs was fired and then rehired. He sort of was a double exception, but a lot of other ones, Cisco Systems, for example, they got, I don't know, the two founders of that, they're a couple lovebirds at Stanford who set up uh, the internet basically, or what was the computer to computer kind of transfers that were necessary for a sort of a wider internet were developed there. They started their company, and they were working out of the kitchen and so forth, and really making some money, but they went sort of, let's see, about a quarter of $1 million up to billions, literally. But they had to kick them out because they weren't very good at the business end of it. Okay, let's see. Okay, is Paddock cheapening parts like BMW replacing metal engine parts with plastic parts? Quality is reduced to a short window like BMW aims at quality. I don't know. I just don't know. I have, this is one thing. It's one thing to be a watch collector, and it's another thing to run a watch company. That's, I can tell you that. They're totally different. They're different realities. One has nothing to do with the other. Anyway, hey, watch and pray. How you doing? Hans number one number Hans Wilstar. Jesus, is this another Rolex fanboy who lost his way? Hey, watch Cardinal. What's the name? Just sucks, in my opinion. Need to scrap it for something else. Brand name and logo are very important. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, if I like FP Journe doesn't really do a lot for me, neither does Philippe Dufour, but they're doing just fine. Uh, just because Archie can't say Parmigiani is no reason to make them change their name. Okay, gotta go, guys. I I was just kidding about Archie. He's a wonderful guy. Okay, let's see. I only got a few other comments here. Let's see. Traveling nomad. As long as borrowing money costs this little, nothing will happen to the market. My 50 cents on the matter is just sad for newbies like me to accept some trains have less a station. Yeah, that's true, but that's always going to be true. There are probably some trains right there now that none of us know about, and someone's going to get on one, and it just I got my lucky ones. I was pure luck. I could have gone out and bought Tag Heuers, Um, I just picked up a FPF last week. Amazing movement, the same finish and better than a pad. Yeah, this is the thing about it, Miami James. They are great watches that I don't know. Maybe it is the name. What to see? That wouldn't affect value of hot brands. Oh yeah, I mean that's true. There's a difference between a hot watch and a something else. Listen, guys, really gotta go. Uh, take care. We're still in this stupid pandemic, so if they tell you to wear a mask, wear it and hate it, but wear it. All right, and everyone take care.